Dawn phenomenon, also known as the dawn effect, is when your blood sugar rises in the morning. But why does it do that? And what's the mechanism? We're going to talk about that, and we're also going to explain why diabetics and people with insulin resistance tend to have a greater response and what that means. We're also going to cover what everyone is asking about. Why does it seem to act really crazy and inexplicable and super stubborn when I do a keto or a fasting diet? If you look this up on the internet, you try to get answers, there won't really be any good answers because they'll explain what it is and show you that it happens, but they won't explain why or why it seems to act strange. So in this video, we're going to make it absolutely crystal clear so that you know when you're doing a low-carb diet why it's doing what it's doing. Coming right up. I probably had 100 people ask me, why is my glucose so high in the morning? Why is my fasting glucose higher than my after meal glucose? I'm eating a low-carb diet. I've been on keto for such and such a period of time. Why isn't it coming down? And some people have heard about the dawn effect, but they don't understand it. And some people just know that their blood sugar is high, even though it's supposed to be lower. So we're going to talk about that and make it totally clear for you. Dawn phenomenon is also known as WHGMS, and that stands for worry about my high glucose in the morning syndrome. No, sorry, that's not really a thing. I just made that up. But based on the number of people asking, it's a real thing. And everything seems to be a syndrome these days, right? Well, what's going on here? When you're sleeping, you don't need a whole lot of energy because you're just kind of chilling there in bed. But during the night, your blood sugar drops because you're not eating anything. And then there is a counter mechanism from various hormones. And they're basically cortisol, glucagon, adrenaline, and human growth hormone. That they slowly rise through the night to compensate for the fact that you're not eating so you can maintain stable blood sugar levels. And then what happens is right before you're about to wake up, your body says, hey, better get you ready for the day. Better get you a little jolt so that you can wake up and be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go about things. So your blood sugar goes kind of steady, and then the cortisol rises, and then you have a spike right before you're about to wake up. So your blood sugar is going to rise a few points, and this is called the dawn effect. And in the normal person, this rises a few points. It's not a strange thing. It happens. It's supposed to happen. It happens in everyone in the world, but in some people, it may not be large enough to be really noticeable unless you just really measure carefully many times. But most people aren't going to measure their blood sugar while they're sleeping, so they don't notice very much of this. So just realize that it's normal. The second thing is that if you're insulin resistant, now whenever you have a cortisol response and whenever you have any blood glucose increase, whether it's from a hormonal effect or whether it's because you ate something, your cells are resistant, so you tend to have greater blood sugar responses. Okay, blood sugar tends to go up more in the people who are insulin resistant, whether it's a hormone or whether it's a meal. So that's just as simple as that. It's going to be the normal response, but it's going to look like it's a little bit larger because you are insulin resistant, so the cells aren't going to soak up that increase as fast as if you were insulin sensitive. We want to contrast this then with something called the Somogyi effect. And that's different. This happens to type 1 diabetics. And why is it only type 1 diabetics? Because they can't produce any insulin on their own. So they take their insulin, they eat the day before, they have a certain blood sugar level when they go to bed, and they have a certain amount of insulin. And maybe they take a shot and maybe they have a pump, but through the night, very often the glucose starts going down. And if they didn't match their insulin and their food perfectly, they can often get a very, very low drop. They can get very hypoglycemic in the middle of the night. So then when this natural, normal hormonal boost comes in to raise blood sugar again, then there is no insulin to counteract it. So they get this huge swing, but it's because they first had insulin and then they ran out of insulin. So now when the body starts producing glucose, there is nothing to counteract that glucose spike, and they wake up with a huge spike of glucose. So this is a different thing. You can improve it by stabilizing blood sugar and becoming more reliant on fat and ketones, but that's a different story. But I just wanted to mention it so that you know about it, because some people, they throw out the dawn effect and the Somoji effect as if it's the same thing, but it's not. So Somoji is a type 1 diabetes thing, and the dawn effect is something that happens to everybody. People, so far, a lot of people are with me. They say, okay, I get it. It's called the dawn effect. There's some hormones, and yes, I'm insulin resistant, so the effect is going to be a little bit larger. But I've done this now for 3-4 months, and my wake up with a glucose of 120, and the weirdest thing is that it stays the same until I eat something. It's like, what's up with that? It makes no sense. And as a matter of fact, it does, but we really need to dig into the picture. We're going to keep it simple, but we're going to make it very clear. So let's say that this is the normal, non-insulin resistant person, and they do what most people do. They eat bread and cereal and toast and orange juice. And they do this and they get away with it for 20, 30 years before they break their carbohydrate tolerance. So the red line here is their nighttime glucose. So their body is healthy, it's balanced, it's maintaining a glucose. And then right before they're about to wake up, they have their cortisol spike. And then the blood sugar rises a few points. So let's say the green line here is about 80. And then the orange line is about 100, and the blue line is about 120. So we start about 85, 90, and then we wake up and it might be 95 or 100 or something. And then we eat a breakfast, and we've listened to the official guidelines of what's healthy for you. You should eat many meals, you should eat 300 grams of carbs per day, and breakfast is the most important meal because you got to really load up on the blood sugar so that you make it through till almost till lunch, or at least till the morning snack. We follow the guidelines, and we have some toast with jam, and we have some milk with cereal, and we have orange juice and some sugar in the coffee. So we get about 120 grams of carbs in our systems at that point. But let's think about what's happening. And when people think about blood sugar, very often they have no idea how much blood sugar is. We talk about the levels, but realize that 100 milligrams of blood sugar per deciliter for the average person is only 5 grams. It is a flat little teaspoon of sugar. That's all the sugar that you have in your system. So you're sleeping all the way through the night and you have 1 teaspoon of sugar circulating. And as you burn up a few little grains of sugar, so to speak, then your liver makes a few more grains and you maintain this level. So when you wake up and your blood sugar went from 90 to 100, what really happened? This cortisol put 1/2 a gram of sugar into your blood. You didn't eat anything yet. There is no load of food or carbohydrate in your system. The liver just made 0.5 gram of sugar and it put it directly into the bloodstream. So now, instead of 4.5 grams, you have 5 grams of sugar. No big deal. But then you just ate 120 grams of carbs. That is going to be some of it's already sugar. It's going to start spiking it very, very quickly here. And some of it is starch. And that's going to take another 10, 15, 20 minutes to break down and turn into sugar. And the entire thing is going to be absorbed in a couple of hours. So 2 hours is 120 minutes. 120 grams means 1 gram per minute, or 60 grams per hour is going to get into a system, into the bloodstream, in a system that can hold 5 to 6 grams. All right? So that means that this is an emergency. We got to handle 1 gram a minute for the next 2 hours in a system that uses sugar much, much slower and that can only hold 4, 5, 6 grams at a time. Ideally, in diabetics, when it rises up to 200, well, now they have 10 grams of sugar. Okay? So the insulin produced is in response to the threat, to the load, to the anticipation, because your body knows how much carb you ate. Even when it's sitting in the stomach, your body is really, really smart and intelligent, because when you put something in your mouth and you taste it, your body knows what's in that food and it starts preparing the digestive response and the insulin responses and so forth. So it knows we got an emergency, we got a big job ahead of us, and we got to process through 120 grams of carbs in a system that can hold about 5. That takes a lot of insulin. And the body is so amazing that it takes decades to break the system, even when we abuse it to that degree. For another visual illustration, so this is roughly how much, this is representing how much glucose was in your bloodstream, and this is how much has to pass through the bloodstream in the next 2 hours. That's a big deal, okay? So your body can handle it as long as it has some reserves, as long as it's healthy, as long as the cells haven't been totally clogged up, then you can process through this. But after 20 years, you're increasing, for every time you do this, you increase your insulin resistance and you build up, and eventually when your body can't keep up anymore, when you broke it, then you got type 2 diabetes. After doing that, whether you have diabetes or insulin resistance, you're somewhere on that gradient. Now you decide, hey, I've learned a lot from these great YouTube videos, so now I'm going to do something about it. So you go low carb, high fat, LCHF, you go keto, you start doing intermittent fasting, you do 18-6, you do 24, you do 6-36 and all 8-36, whatever, all that good stuff. But you're doing the low carb and the intermittent fasting, and now you notice that you're waking up with blood glucose of 120. And you have noticed that your A1C used to be 10, and now it's like 5.6. So it looks like you're making progress, and you might have lost 30, 50 pounds, which is what a lot of people tell me. So it seems like it's working. You're getting your A1C down, you're getting your weight down, but you also heard that the fasting glucose for a low-carb diet is supposed to be around 80 or even 75. So what's up? You've done it for 3 months and you're wondering, there's something wrong with me. No, there isn't. So let's go back to this example and let's contrast it and talk this through. Through the night, I don't know what your blood sugar is, but let's assume that it's somewhere in the middle of this range. It's sitting around 100. And then you have these hormonal effect. You get this dawn effect, and now your blood sugar jumps 20 points. So what does that mean? again, during the night you might have had 4 or 5 grams of blood sugar, grams of sugar in the blood, and then the hormones kick out another 1 to 2 grams. So this is what we have to realize. This is not a big deal. It is 2 grams of sugar. This is not an emergency. This is not a big deal for the body. It doesn't have to turn on all the alarms and ring the bells and start making a bunch of insulin because you made 1 or 2 grams of sugar. So then you wake up and you have 6 grams of sugar in the blood, and you don't have breakfast because you've learned about intermittent fasting. So you add 0 grams of sugar, and you're thinking, hey, I didn't eat anything, my blood sugar is supposed to come down. But your body says, hey, no big deal, I'm chilling, I have this totally under control. If it goes high or if you eat something, I'll do something about it. But this is not a big deal. I'm backing off on the insulin because there's nothing really here to process. All that happened was you added 1 to 2 grams of sugar. All right? So then you're fasting, and then comes time for your meal, and now you're doing the right thing. You're eating a low-carb diet, maybe keto. Let's say you're eating twice a day and you're keeping it at 20 grams of net carbs per day. So this meal has 10 grams of carbs. All right, the body says, hey, I got something. I've got a little bit of protein that's going to need a little insulin. I got some carbs. I got lots of good fat to fuel me. But there's no emergency. But the body senses, I got something. The time to do something about this. Time to increase a little bit of insulin. And now, because you made some insulin, your blood sugar comes down because you ate. So this is a totally different animal than this guy, because we're trained to think that blood sugar is always supposed to come up when we eat. Well, if you understand this now, then you'll see why that's not necessarily the case, that the body behaves differently, but it always behaves intelligent. Contrast these 10 grams, because you eat protein and fat and vegetables and foods that are high in fiber, high in fat, they absorb very slowly. So these 10 grams, they have 3, 4, 5 hours to get out in the bloodstream. So now we're talking 2 to 3 grams per hour. And the body says, all right, I'll make a little bit of insulin, but it's not going to take much. And that's why the blood sugar comes down and it levels out. Again, in this case, it's an emergency because we go from this much glucose and we have to process through this much glucose. In this case, we had a little bit of more, but it's no big deal. And it's still no big deal when we eat because we just add that much more and we got basically all day to take care of it, so why worry about it? So this is why it's so important to understand the big picture. Everyone is freaking out about blood sugar. The only treatment for insulin resistance and diabetes are drugs to lower blood sugar, but that's not the problem. Look at all the other videos so that you understand what insulin resistance is and what treatments and metformin and insulin, what that does, that it doesn't solve the problem, it perpetuates the problem and it pushes it further in the wrong direction. If you're doing the low carb and you're in this situation, that stubborn blood sugar around 120 is a good thing. That means you're doing the right thing. Your body is not in an alarm state. It's chilling. It doesn't have to work so hard. So the big picture includes A1C and insulin. You want to calculate your HOMA-IR. And you want to understand that what you're after is not glucose. Don't worry about it. What you're after is the long-term insulin resistance. You want to become insulin sensitive, meaning that the cell gets into a place of balance where it starts wanting some food instead of being force-fed all the time. If you like this, we have lots of good videos on related topics. You can learn everything that you need to know about how to lose weight, get rid of diabetes and insulin resistance, and get as healthy as possible. And if you're new to the channel, make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you can keep getting these nuggets of information and about how the body works, so you can keep getting healthier and healthier and focus on the big picture, not just the details. Thanks for watching. See you next time.